Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Spliced In Later. I hope you all are doing well out there in the world and you're keeping safe and all the general stuff I ask you when I try to come up with some way to introduce these videos. Maybe you went to the movies on the weekend, maybe you saw Fast and Furious 9, maybe you stayed home and watched Luca on Disney+. If you didn't do either of those things, that's also fine. I hope you had a good weekend regardless. Today we are doing a standard episode, 1 week out from our 100th episode, and boy oh boy do I still not know what I'm going to do, so be apprehensive about that one because I know I am. I do not know how or what to celebrate. I know for my 50th I was like, isn't this great? No, it wasn't my 50th, it was just exactly 1 year to the day since I started. I don't know, maybe I'll do nothing for it, maybe I will let it go by unacknowledged, but we will see. Anyway, for today's episode we are once again diving back into the MCU. One of my ongoing series is looking into each MCU product that has come out over the years, sort of talking about it, because as you know from being a regular listener on this show, but if you're brand new, I love the MCU. It's one of my favorite movie franchises, not so much because it's the greatest film experience of all time or anything like that. It's just the thing I enjoy the most. I've enjoyed all the different products having their own film series, but all coming together. I enjoy the continuity of characters crossing over one another, and I enjoy the world building, all of that stuff. And generally, every movie that I've seen, every TV show, I've got something out of. So it's stuff like this information where I shine. So why not focus on that more often than not? I know it's probably not been as long since I last talked about an MCU product, considering the other things that I'm doing as well, Disney stuff, 100 bucket list movies, talking about TV, stuff like that. But I also know that in the next couple of weeks or so, I will be talking to you about Black Widow, which will be the new MCU movie that will premiere in the next 2 weeks, as well as what I think of the latest MCU TV show, Loki, which is currently streaming on Disney Plus and will be done in about 4 weeks. So I know in a couple of weeks it's going to be back-to-back MCU stuff. And to be fair, the last MCU thing I did was also new with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So before I get into that and you all go, all right, that's enough MCU, give us a break for now, I do want to get one older thing in to beef up the content for you, so you've got that. I promise after today's one, it probably might be a couple of months before I get back to the MCU once we address this and also the upcoming stuff. Or it may not, or I may go back to it whenever I want, because at the end of the day, it's my show and I can do whatever it is I like. So be prepared for that. Either we're getting a break from MCU or we aren't. It's going to be one or the other, and I couldn't say which one, but we shall see moving forward. Anyway, today we are talking about Iron Man 2, which came out in 2010 and is the third in the long-running MCU films. It is the sequel to Iron Man, obviously, in 2008, and it is a unique film. It's an interesting film. Now, I will say right off the bat, I will never say about any of these films that I don't like them, because it's not true. I enjoy them all, but there are some that I enjoy more than others, and there are a couple, only a select few in the MCU, which frustrate me a little, or I enjoy not as much, not necessarily due to the production of the movie and the performances and all like that, but the behind the scenes stuff, what was put into making this movie, why the movie exists. We're at a point now where every single thing that comes out for the MCU is intricately planned. Everything is important to an ultimate goal. At the end for Avengers Endgame back in 2015, you might have thought, do we really need an Ant-Man movie? Why introduce Ant-Man right now? We don't really care about Ant-Man. But in the long run, Ant-Man was very important to the overall end of Phase 3 story, or end of Part 1 of this thing. Iron Man 2 is one of those unfortunate instances where it's in the best of both worlds, but it's not used effectively on either side. So we will get into that. It'll be a fun topic that also is a little interesting, maybe a little depressing. It depends. If you really like Iron Man 2, I am not about to shit on it by any means necessary, because I do really enjoy it. But there's just some stuff about it which is frustrating, and stuff that I cannot unsee or unknow. Now I know about it. If you don't know, that's fair. There are some people in the world who don't. Iron Man 2, being the sequel to Iron Man in 2008, continues the story of Tony Stark as Iron Man, as in most cases with a sequel. Now that the origin story is out of the way, we delve into some more personal stories, some more stuff about being a superhero rather than becoming a superhero. Tony is very popular. Everybody knows he's Iron Man. He's racing about, saving the day. But he's got some real personal stuff going on that is affecting his ability to perform as a superhero, and also his relationships, because the arc reactor in his chest that saved him from dying in Iron Man, that powers his suits, it is slowly killing him. And there is no antidote. There's no way to stop it. And if the arc reactor is removed, he'll die anyway. So there is no way out. So Tony is a man living on borrowed time, knowing that he will die sooner rather than later. So naturally, Tony, being a genius, billionaire, narcissistic playboy nutcase as he is, he obviously doesn't handle it particularly well. He goes about it in all the wrong ways, which distances a lot of his friends around him, namely his long-suffering secretary Pepper, his best friend Rhodey. Meanwhile, he's being attacked on two fronts. There is a mysterious Russian called Ivan Vanko, played by Mickey Rourke, who has a vendetta against Stark, as he believes Stark's father has wronged his father in some way. So he's coming after him with a vengeance. And on the other side of that is Justin Hammer, played by Sam Rockwell, which is basically another Tony Stark, but a Tony Stark that gives in to his more sinister ambitions and who constantly lives in Stark's shadow. So Hammer wants the Iron Man tech. He wants it to be handed over to the government so he can use it, so he can make his own suits, and he can be the most popular billionaire in the world. Alongside all of that, we get introduced to some more characters. Black Widow shows up for the first time in this movie. Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury, after showing up in a post-credit scene in Iron Man, gets a bit of a role in this film. Agent Coulson returns. John Favreau as Happy Hogan, Tony's bodyguard. A very smart move by John Favreau to throw himself into the first film in a little cameo, because Happy Hogan continues to appear in this stuff now. And now that John Favreau is locked in as Happy, he's set for life. He's currently showing up in the Spider-Man movie. So nice work. Good stuff, Happy. Tony's also got his AI Jarvis once again helping him out. Paul Bettany gets a bit more to say in this film, gets a bit more character into it. However small, it is there. And we even get some flashbacks to a young Howard Stark, who would of course go on to do bigger and better things in the MCU as well. Now, what I like about the film, obviously, is its performances. Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark once again kills it. Whatever he's doing, whether he's being friendly or rude to the people around him, he is fun to watch. He is absolutely a joy. He's embodied this character of Tony Stark. There's been a saying that only few actors in the world have ever been perfectly cast in a role, and I would say that Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark is definitely one of them. I can't imagine who would play Tony Stark now. Who could have played him before? I believe there was talk that Tom Cruise might have done it in the long run, but it's one of those performances where you don't know where Robert Downey Jr. ends and Tony Stark begins, which is very interesting. He's got a lot of layers of emotion in here as well. So on the outside, he's putting on a very confident front, but on the inside, you see him dealing with his mortality and his impact on the world and what he has done to the world and all of that stuff. And it's some powerful stuff in there, which is interesting. The characters and the world building around him as well, they're all interesting. I particularly like for this film that they give Rhodey, his best friend, played now by Don Cheadle. Infamously, Terrence Howard played him in the first film. Then when the second film came around, he wanted more money. But rather than negotiate, they went, okay, see you later. We need to pay Robert Downey Jr. We'll get somebody else who's more agreeable. It's hard to say whose side you should take in that argument. I'm not sure exactly how much money Terrence Howard was asking for. But I also really, really, really like Don Cheadle's portrayal of Rhodey. Don Cheadle puts him as the ultimate everyman. He's a guy who has no real origin story or anything like that. He's just a fella who put on the War Machine armor and went, I'm going to help out. I'm going to help Stark. I'm going to help my country. I'm going to be a hero. But he has no real hiccups or character problems or anything like that. He's basically, from here on out, he's in the movie to react to things in the logical sense, in the way we would, the way the everyday man would react to seeing a talking raccoon or a giant purple man with stones that is going to vaporize the earth already. He's just like, what the heck is going on? But he does it in a very likable way. And I am really, really impressed with Don Cheadle's ability to build a character that really doesn't have much going for him into his own thing as well, which is great. Black Widow, it's a bit hard to rewatch this first one because Scarlett Johansson being brought in back in the early days, and it's I'd say that it's not an issue anymore, but it always will be. We need to do something about it. Black Widow for this first film is very much eye candy. It's very much wearing tight leather clothes, bending over certain ways. You can go, oh my god, look at that talked about by other male characters in the film as property, so it is hard to appreciate that. But it's still, it's Scarlett Johansson is great as Black Widow, and her eventual evolution and role into being a part of the Avengers. It's got to start somewhere. It's a shame it stumbled starting here, but at least she got in, and she's getting her own film finally after 11 years. 11 years later, she gets her own film. So good stuff there. And of course, Agent Coulson, Happy, Jarvis, Fury, Justin Hammer, they're all larger-than-life characters that all get their own moments to shine in the film. Sam Rockwell is a great actor, and I love him in this movie. You could argue that Hammer is more of a villain in this film than Ivan Vanko because he does and says more, and you can understand his agenda more. Vanko, Mickey Rourke's Whiplash character, is very much this, the vendetta, the person who wants to have revenge for being wronged, which is interesting enough, but then he falls under the way of Hammer's larger-than-life performance, and then eventually falls into the trap of just being the anti-Iron Man, the villain with the same tech, but using it for evil, that sort of thing. It's still very fun to watch. It's a great film. It's, as Jon Favreau directed both this and the previous Iron Man, they have the same feel. It has the sequel issue of always trying to do the same thing, but bigger and louder, and for the most part, it does work. The problem with Iron Man 2 that I've always had, and it's why whenever people ask my ranking of MCU films, this film always falls down the bottom, and a lot of people ask me why, what's the real reason going on for that, and it's basically that this film lacks a direction that the previous Iron Man had, and that other films have learned to have existing in the MCU film world. I said before with Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk, which works really well for them and why I like both of them very much, is that despite the fact that they started the MCU, they were not defined by it. They were their own standalone films that threw in their little tidbits about what could possibly be a larger world, but take all that stuff out and you still had them in their own movie doing whatever. Iron Man 2 has the unfortunate bit of being in the middle, where when the movie was being made, Jon Favreau, everybody's brought back. This is the point where we're going, okay, we are going to aim for a cinematic universe, and at the very least, we want to build to a big Avengers movie. At this point, they weren't even thinking as far ahead as 21 films or whatever. It's just, can we get 6 characters, 6 superheroes from various different franchises together into a team-up film? Which, of course, we all know Wes's history about that. But Iron Man 2 suffered because it tried too hard to introduce other characters that would become bigger in other films, or hint so much in Avengers film that the film itself that it was trying to do, the story about Iron Man, unfortunately, was left to the wayside or pushed around a certain bit, where you had whole chunks of scenes and character plot points which didn't really mean much in the larger concept of Iron Man 2, rather than just to go, it's Nick Fury. Remember Nick Fury? He wants to start the Avengers. The Avengers is a movie that's coming. Get ready for it. After this film, when Thor and Captain America's first films came out in 2011, they fared a lot better because they were doing origin stories, so they got to focus on establishing their character, but they were establishing them into a world where they already knew the world building and what they were going to do. So unlike Iron Man, who made a film and went, maybe it could be in a bigger world, Thor and Captain America went, this is a movie that will exist in this world, and we can use that to enhance our own origin story. So it will still be the Thor story and the Captain America story, but all these little bits will contribute to the plot rather than distract from it. Iron Man 2 suffered from already introducing Iron Man, and rather than focusing on Iron Man's continuing story, it was Iron Man's continuing story alongside everything else that we're getting ready for. To some might say, oh, that's not a big deal. That's fine, that's fair. It really depends for you on what you want to get out of a movie and what you appreciate the most. There's been a lot of talk about whether you like or hate the new Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald movie. I personally hated it, but I know people that loved it. And the people that loved it, I think, love it because they see things that they remember. Fantastic Beasts 2, for all its problems, whatever, throws a lot of stuff in there which fans of Harry Potter know and remember. The origin of Hogwarts, the strangers, the riddles, everything that's going on in there. So when you're watching the movie and you see that, you go, I remember that. And the endorphins in your brain immediately go, you like that. So remembering it makes you happy to see it. Therefore, you're enjoying what you're seeing. So you may watch Iron Man 2 and see Nick Fury and see the Avengers logo and see Thor's hammer and go, I know those things, I'm happy to see them, without really considering whether it's relevant to the story and whether it has detracted from the story itself or not. For example, this film has several references to movies which mean nothing to the overall plot of Iron Man 2. Agent Coulson, a very interesting character played by Clark Gregg in the first Iron Man, he shows up in Iron Man 2. This is the time to learn more about Coulson, or to get him to interact more with Stark and have him play a pivotal part in the movie. But he shows up, he's told he has to help Stark, but his very next scene he says, I've got to go, I have to go somewhere else. Basically he's saying, I've got to go, I'm supposed to be in another movie, so I'm not really going to stick around. I'm just in here because I was introduced in Iron Man and people would expect me to be in it. Furthermore, while he's there, he picks up Captain America's shield. It's used as a fun joke, but the problem is with that joke is that they never intended for that joke to lead to anything that was relevant to the Captain America movie. It's just in there to go, Captain America's shield. Of course, Captain America's going to be in the Avengers. That's cool. I'm happy. That's great. Look at that. That's cool. Which for me, it's annoying. It's frustrating. Samuel Jackson, his Nick Fury, wonderful. I love him in the Avengers films. He's in this movie for no real reason at all than to just say a couple of lines and then to say, the Avengers are coming, and then off he goes. Take that out. It's fine. Put it in a post-credits or something. Don't have him in the scene, in the movie, with chunks of scenes that don't mean anything to what's going on in this current film. To be fair, this is all teething troubles. After Iron Man 2, as I said, Thor onwards, they got into their groove. They knew how to tell a story and reference other things and bring in cameos and things without it detracting. Case in point, Ant-Man. Ant-Man fights Falcon when he's at the Avengers compound, but Falcon's not in there to go, remember Falcon? Falcon is there because they have to go to the Avengers compound to get something that is relevant to Ant-Man's heist later in the film. Nick Fury doesn't have to show up in this film. Coulson could go instead. Black Widow. All of that stuff there. And seeing all these little things, my brain just unpacks it all, so it hampers my ability to enjoy the film, because again, I see it less as its own film standing on its own 2 feet, and more as a trailer for the Avengers and for other films and things to come. So that's the only real reason why I do not enjoy Iron Man 2 as much on rewatches as other things. As I said though, that doesn't mean I don't like it, I'm just frustrated by it. I really like Tony Stark's performance in here. I like Rhodey as War Machine. I like Justin Hammer. It's a good, fun continuation of Iron Man's story. There's just too much going on. But look, that being said, I still really enjoy it, and I would give it an 8 out of 10. So at the end of the day, what does it matter what I'm saying to you? It doesn't matter if I like something or I'm frustrated by something. I still go, oh, it's the greatest movie I've ever seen. So what's the point, really? The point is that I am able to determine when I like something and when I don't like something. You know, I don't just blindly like every single MCU film, as has been told to be on multiple occasions. I do like them, but there are others that I like more than others, and the things that I don't like, I'm allowed to be really annoyed by. So there you go. Have a think about Iron Man 2 if you have seen it recently or in a while. Did you like it? Were you frustrated by it? I know people that liked it originally that don't like it now, and I even know people who weren't impressed by it on their first view, but on a recent review have gone, okay, yeah, that's better than I thought it would be. I rank it higher. So yeah, let me know if you want, which you probably won't, but for sure, have a think yourself. Is Iron Man 2 a solid film? Does it have the mess that I just said it did? Or am I talking nonsense? Let me know. Or don't. It doesn't matter. But thank you very much for listening. As always, it's been a pleasure to ramble at you about Marvel stuff for the 20 minutes or so. Next week, I should be back from my 100th episode. Again, what it'll be about, only time will tell. And I hope time tells me, because I just do not know. But be sure to tune in for that. So it should be interesting, whatever it is. But until then, I love and appreciate you as always. Stay safe out there, stay kind to one another, and all that jazz. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.